Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Top Lines and Tales, the nation's favourite livestock podcast. As always, we'd like to say a word of thanks to our sponsors, Harbro. And Harbro, of course, are suppliers and manufacturers of top-quality livestock nutrition and nutritional advice. This week on Top Lines and Tales, I'm speaking to Bill Bruce from Meagle in Perthshire. Bill, welcome to Top Lines and Tales.
Thank you.
And Bill, the Bruce family started farming there in Perthshire a long time ago, I think 125 years or more, am I right?
That's right, we've 125 years written on our kit, so it must have been that length of time ago. And we've chopped and changed a bit since then. We started off with tenanted farms, and then we were able to buy our farms. We're very fortunate. We're farming in Strathmore, which is probably one of the better arable areas of Scotland.
Mm-hmm. Your father and your grandfather, obviously, before you, and you joined the business in the 50s.
Yes, my father he was anxious to retire, and I was very fortunate because when I was in my 20s, he said get on with it. So I got a bit of a crash course, but it was a good way to start.
Great. And this is a livestock podcast. We'll chat through a little bit of some of the other things that you do there at Bruce Farms, but more on the livestock side of it. And I'm intrigued to know that you were in Suffolk. So you would be one of the early pioneers in the Suffolk sheep breed, I think, under the Drumkilbo prefix. Am I right?
That's correct. Well, I've always been very keen about pedigree breeding. I mean, that's been my sort of passion. Luckily, it's not my complete lifestyle, and I wouldn't be going on any holidays anymore. But it's a real passion, and I wouldn't say it's all together. Well, it is a hobby. It's I hope sort of contributes a little bit, but not very much to the whole business. When I started off in my early life, I bred pigeons, I bred mice. I'm talking about when I was at school and quite young.
Okay.
So I've always been interested in breeding anything, really. And then my father had a flock of Suffolk sheep, which he showed locally. He didn't show nationally. And I wasn't really encouraged to farm very much when I was young. But we had a very nice Irish stockman, a friendly chap, and he lived on a farm just about a mile away on one of our farms. So I used to wander over there, and he let me do anything I wanted. Really, suckle lambs, help with the lambing. So he was a great encouragement. So I got really interested in Suffolk sheep.
Okay. It's interesting. We talk to a lot of pedigree livestock breeders on this podcast, and the great and successful livestock breeders do breed more than one thing. I've had this chat with Americans where they just focus on one breed or one species, and it's very interesting. Some of the great breeders started breeding all sorts of different things, and that's obviously yourself there. And it's breeding is a blueprint once you've got it worked out, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in that kind of thing, and we're really all just interested in breeding a perfect specimen, which is almost impossible, but it is such a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And can we just go back to those Suffolk sheep? I know you had Jimmy Wilson there as a stockman, and Jimmy Wilson's been on this podcast too, and a great Suffolk breeder in his own right. But I believe he was a shepherd for you.
Oh, Jimmy was fantastic. Yes, the first time I met him was at the Royal Show. I used to go to the Royal Show every year. I went with Drew Adam, who I was our near neighbour every year, the son of Robert Adam. I went with Drew every year to the Royal Show, and he looked at Angus all day, and I looked at Suffolk sheep all day. And Jimmy was shepherding for Gordon Blackstock.
Oh yeah,
I don't know who will still remember him, but he was a very lively Irishman. He was very influential in my life, really, because I was in the Scottish young farmers beef team that competed at the Highland Show against other things. So I was actually I was a reserve the first year, so I got all the training from Gordon Blackstock, and then I got it again the second year. So I met him at the Royal with Jimmy. He'd Suffolks, and he was showing a ram, and he said, "I've got a very keen young lad here," and this was Jimmy. And eventually Jimmy came and looked after my sheep. He actually left, but he had his own farm, when he actually left, and then I couldn't get someone to look after my sheep properly. I was trying to do arable farming as well. I didn't have too much time to do it myself. So I went to Jimmy and I said, "Will you come back for 2 years and build the flock back up again?" And he did. And just to show you how good he was, we won the Gold Cup when we for the best flock when we dispersed.
I read that you won the Gold Cup. I mean, that is the top accolade that everybody in the Suffolk breed wants to win. So that's a great, among many other things that you've won, that's a great achievement. And what were the Suffolk sheep like back then? Can you describe a little bit, and maybe compare them to how they got to in the 80s and 90s and then to now?
Well, I used to go down to Ipswich every year. That's when I started, really. We bought 10 gimmers from a well-known flock that was dispersing, 10 gimmers d'Arabe, and that got me started off. And after that, my good friend Willie Porter from Scrine, he had a flock of Suffolk sheep, and he was we were good friends. We went on holiday once a year down to Ipswich, and the sheep there were completely different from what they are now. The backs were all clipped, of course, flat, as they do with showing sheep. And they used to, the shepherds there used to sort of ripple their backs, and you could almost see the flesh rippling along their back, which you certainly don't see now.
Mm-hmm.
They suddenly went all for, they were much more fine-boned, they had very silky faces, long ears. They were quite different. Then they suddenly became big-boned with rough hair and not nearly so fleshy. So to me, the original Suffolks were a better breed than they are now.
Yeah, well, I think they certainly turned a corner and gone back towards that. And for my listeners there, my overseas listeners, Ipswich, of course, is in Suffolk, so it's that's the home of where the Suffolk sheep came from. But Scotland became the home of the Suffolk, really, didn't it? And the boys in Aberdeenshire, the mares of Muresk and such like.
It's good to mention Aberdeenshire. Nothing against Aberdeenshire. I've got a lot of good friends there, but they like big bones and rough hair, and that's what sold. But I remember the first Suffolk ram I bought again. That was at Ipswich. It was the most beautiful specimen I've ever seen. I remember walking along the pens, and this head was looking out over the pens. It was a completely square jaw. It was a magnificent thing. It was called Laws Hall Cupbearer. Laws Hall was a famous flock down there. Okay. And its head was actually used on the Suffolk logos after that. Right. Because it was such a beautiful specimen, but a typical silky-haired, lovely, fleshy animal. Mm-hmm. Its first crop won the best crop of ewe lambs that year in the flock competition.
Okay. And did you turn out did Jimmy turn your sheep head for you at the Highland Show and various other places?
Yeah, we didn't do a huge amount of showing, but yeah, no, Jimmy was he's an amazing stockman, and. But when he left, I was very sad. But he had his own farm to look after, and his own flock, and starting his own flock and everything. So, anything that wasn't right with one eye or one teat or something wrong with it, when I was building up the flock to sell, Jimmy took home. So he had the genetics, and he all he needed was one lamb out of it, and he was up and running.
No, brilliant, and a great stockman that he is, and has been, and obviously very successful with his own sheep. And let's just talk about the dispersal then. So what year did you disperse them, and where did they go?
Oh, they went all over the country. It was a very successful dispersal. When did they disperse? I got a notes here to see about the time I was getting into Shorthorns. I can't remember the exact date. Okay. It was quite a long time ago.
And you mentioned Gordon Blackstock, and Gordon Blackstock is somebody I've had a lot of interest in over the years, been a phenomenal man, a successful man, and an encouragement to a lot of people, I think. And those that don't know, Gordon Blackstock would be one of the first to bring polled Shorthorns, I think, in from the USA, if I'm right in thinking. So that did he encourage you to go into the Shorthorn breed?
Yeah, he was a very lively Irishman. He's a very jolly person, and he was manager of Bapton Shorthorns, who came from the south up to Cairnbroogie in Aberdeenshire. Mm-hmm. and he was very helpful to young people. And when I was training to do this, very fortunate to be training to do this stuff in the Young Farmers Scottish team. We went all over the country training. I don't know how he had the time, but 6 or 8 of us going around, and because he was Shorthorn orientated, we went to a lot of Shorthorn herds, and I became quite interested in Shorthorns.
I was going to say why Shorthorns, and I will again for our listeners say that you probably, your name would be associated, or the Balmoral name anyway, and Shorthorns would be associated with probably the breed change or the game changer for the Shorthorn breed. And of course, you're going back into the 60s and 70s, and I've written a lot more about the Angus maybe than the Shorthorns, but they became very short-legged and looking for that export market. And you must have taken those when you first went into Shorthorns. You must have been still with cattle of that size.
Well, first of all, I was in Angus, and that was really what was my passion originally, because being neighbours with Bob Adam at New House of Glamis, I used to see him quite a lot, and I was very friendly with Drew, so I saw him quite a lot. So I was really interested in Angus, and for my 21st birthday. My parents said, "What do you want for your birthday?" I said, "I want an Angus heifer from Newhouse." So it was quite a tall order. So I got one, and lo and behold, its first calf made £5,000 in Perth. Now 5,000 was a lot of money, and what year was it? It was I think 62.
Okay.
It was a lot of money, and I was sorely tempted to go and immediately get more Angus and build up my herd, but I didn't have much cash. In fact, I was extremely short of it. So the 5,500 actually it was enough to build a new grain dryer. So that shows you the value of the pound at that time.
It's incredible, isn't it? Some of those prices back then, and how far the money would go compared to today. Yeah. And let's just move on into the Shorthorns. And you'd be a little bit later when you got into those.
Just to continue the Angus again, you were mentioning Gordon Blackstock. Mm-hmm. When I said I couldn't afford to buy any more Angus, I went to the Harveston dispersal.
Okay, did you? Okay, that's interesting.
J.E. Kerr Harveston, one of the best herds in the country.
Yes, indeed.
Harveston dispersal, and having discussed what I was going to buy and what I would like to buy for a long time beforehand, I went there, and the number of times I put my hand up to bid, and lo and behold, he was bidding against me, Gordon Blackstock. So I never bought a single thing.
Gordon Blackstock, I think he was buying on commission at that sale. I think he was one of the biggest buyers at the sale. And the dearest animal at that sale, of course, was a heifer that was a cow rather that went to Bob Adams. So you were buying from a good herd there, or trying from a good herd.
He got 20 or 30,000 from a calf from that cow. Yeah,
that's right. He did indeed. Now, and the great, you'll have known then, did you? I'm J.E. Kerr, because he's somebody that I have an absolute fascination with, and always chatting on about on this podcast. It's again a very able man that started off breeding rabbits.
I didn't know him. I'd spoken to him obviously. I didn't know him, but I'll tell you an interesting thing. He had a chap who lived, and I went to see this guy in a cottage, and he was breeding hamsters.
Oh, yes,
with squares on their back. White, black, and brown squares to get them exact. And he was inbreeding and line breeding, and he was doing it on behalf of Kerr to show whether an auntie and an uncle would breed better than an auntie and a cousin and all that kind of stuff. He was doing all these line breeding with hamsters.
Certainly, I knew that, and again, I think that somebody said that he actually was trying to breed tartan hamsters, if I remember right, or with tartan marks on their back there. And again, fascinating that people would study that deeply. And obviously, the line breeding and the inbreeding is something that built some of these herds into such great stead. And as I said, with the Shorthorns, would you have started then with some of the smaller Shorthorns when you got going with those?
No, with the Shorthorns, I bought 120 Shorthorns because I thought I'd like to start a herd of Shorthorns. 75% of them were dairy Shorthorns from the north of England. There were some fantastic dairy Shorthorns in the north of England. There was Gainsborough, Scarth. They were big, fat, not fat, but beefy dairy Shorthorns. They're quite different from some of the real milky ones. So I went to these very beefy herds, and also bought. I bought a total of 120. About 25 of them were Scottish Shorthorns from all the top herds in Scotland. The Morpheys, the Cares, the Bruntons, and from everyone. I bought 2 or 3 from everyone.
Okay.
And then in order to cross with a main Anjou.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to France to I saw the main Anjou in France, and then it was really a descendant of the Durham Shorthorn.
Yes.
So I then went with the buying commission to buy main Anjou. They didn't last long as a breed because the Simmental and the Charolais were better. The main Anjou were some of them were milk and some of them were beef.
Mm-hmm.
But the beefy ones were really good. So 15 bulls came into the country, bought by other people, and very quickly they got fed up with main Anjou. So I went round every 15 of the bulls, and there was one outstanding one called Aegidius. So I bought him, and then I put all my 120 Shorthorns in calf to this bull.
Wow, incredible. And I know I know that you had done that. And you just clarify me for a little bit, because, I mean, I know with the Angus, they looked at grading them up. Drew Adam told me himself that he discussed with the Angus Society that maybe they should put a British Frisian in them to alter them. And the Angus very much stuck by their own guns and wouldn't allow that to happen. So how did the Shorthorns get swayed by allowing a percentage of foreign blood to come in to improve them?
Quite tricky. There was a bit of opposition.
Yeah.
I was on the committee, and when I brought crossbreds into the market. They didn't sell very well, but it showed that they were an awful lot bigger and better and less patchy than the traditional Scottish Shorthorn.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and at some stage, you obviously carried on breeding those up.
Well, I crossed all the dual-purpose Shorthorns, the dairy Shorthorns, and the Scottish beef Shorthorns with this fantastic bull, Aegidius. And then after the first crop, it was quite clear what was breeding and what wasn't. Most of the ones, to be honest, from the traditional Scottish Shorthorn were too small and weren't any good. So I culled them purely on I didn't want 120, I wanted 60.
Okay.
So most of them disappeared, just purely based on what the calf looked like.
And then keeping those heifer calves back, did you just cull the males out and then just bring the heifers back into the flock, the herd again?
They were first cross heifers, and then I bought a very good bull called Burnton Dickler. He was a top price in Perth that year. He was a really good traditional beef Shorthorn. So he was square and good bones, and he was a good beef Shorthorn. So I put him onto the crosses, the main Anjou cross dairy or beef Shorthorn.
And were you the only one doing this, bringing these main Anjous into the show? Was this your baby, your idea to bring the main Anjou in there, or was there a consensus of people that thought this was going to be the future? No,
there was nobody else thought it was a very good idea. I don't think. No, it was, and in the committee there was a bit of resistance to it as well. But to be honest, the Shorthorn were going downhill rapidly. They were so small and they weren't selling, and they really they needed something to bring them back up again. And the fact that the main Anjou was originally a Durham Shorthorn, it wasn't a complete outcross.
Okay, the Shorthorn, of course, being underpinning a lot of other breeds, the Belgian Blues, I think claims to be goes back to the Shorthorn and many other breeds, but it would be a different type of animal to the Shorthorns that you had, certainly.
Yeah, no, the main Anjou were, as I say, there were two types. There were milky types and then beef types, and the beef ones they had as much weight gain as a Charolais.
Mm-hmm. Okay, really,
they were good cattle.
And which part, just remind me or remind our listeners, which part of the main Anjou, it is French, I think. Were they down in the Massif Central, somewhere down that way?
No, they were Chateaugontier, where's that? It's in the northish.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah, that's further up. Okay, and as you said, the breed maybe didn't hear much of it from to these days, but obviously that's what put you in front of the
There
rest.
were a lot of them in France, a lot of them. But
Okay.
France has some very good breeds.
Yeah, yeah, and taking the Shorthorns forward. By the time you got into the 70s, I suppose it'd be middle 70s. Would it be the time you started hitting the straps with the Shorthorns and starting getting saleable bulls?
Well, in the 80s, really, yeah.
Okay.
Um, they no, we had some good bulls. We one particularly good bull we bred ourselves, Mobile Scorpio. He was a son of Dickler, um, and he bred 9 either champion or reserve champions over his time at the Perth sales.
I think you had a lot of champions. I don't know how many champions you had there, but you had a lot of champions certainly in the Shorthorn ring at Perth, and you would have been struggling to start with to find decent bulls that you could use though. So I suppose you'd end up breeding your own bulls to put back into the grading up system.
Well, I had to use. I didn't have any bulls to begin with, and I had these crossbred Shorthorn Ménanjou. So I mated them with Barnton Dickler. It was a good bull, and then I bought Panam Tiger from the tailors of Philorth. He was a polled Shorthorn, which I wasn't really interested in the polled bit, but he was a very good bull as well. So after I'd finished with them, I only used my own breeding after that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a bull that a lot of people will remember is Balmoral Cracker. I think.
Yeah, yeah. Crackle actually went. Yeah, Biggers bought a good bull. The James Playfair Hannah bought a good bull. Crackle went to a butcher called Doughty, who lived in the south. And
Doughty, that's right, Fred Doughty. Yes, I remember the book. Yes, yeah.
He showed him at the Royal Show.
He did.
And people got fed up because he won 3 years running. Traditional Shorthorn people were completely fed up with this bull. I wasn't showing it; it was somebody else.
He was a tremendous bull. I remember him very well, actually. You say that with Doughty having that, and then the Shorthorns. You reached dizzy heights with those, but by then you were getting into the Charolais. Were you running the Charolais cattle alongside the Shorthorns then, Bill?
Yeah, just beginning to bring the Charolais in at the same time as I had Shorthorns. But the Shorthorns really didn't, we were getting decent prices as long as they were sort of champion or something like that. But there were 8 or 10 making a price, but not a huge number, to begin with. They're flying now. It's taken off, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, for a fairly ordinary Charolais, I could get the same price as an absolutely top champion Shorthorn. So it was really and the Charolais were beginning to build up, and I thought, I can't run 2 breeds. One's plenty for the way we farm, but if we've got an arable farm,
mm-hmm.
And it's not totally a hobby, but it is. And I thought we've got to keep the arable farm first and foremost. So
sure.
That's when I dispersed the Shorthorns.
And stuck with the breed that made the money. I remember having Neil Massey on this podcast, and Neil saying the same thing, that he nearly gave up on the Angus because they just weren't earning any money, but he just kept them because he loved them. But the Charolais are the ones earning the trade, and that'll be the same thing with yourself.
Yeah, I'm a good friend of Neil's. I told him to give up the Angus, and he had the best special there's ever been.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
I've been to 3 great dispersals in my life. I went to the De Quincey dispersal, the Herefords.
Did you? Okay.
That was an amazing dispersal.
Yeah.
A bull calf made 15,000. That's God knows how long ago. Mm-hmm. The Harvesting dispersal, which I've told you about, mm-hmm. and Neil Massey's dispersal was a fantastic dispersal.
Yeah, three great breeders and 3 great dispersals, and quite rightly so. And you're right, De Quincey was another incredible man, wasn't he? That he could breed dogs and budgerigars and all sorts of things. And
the same mold as Harvesting.
Yeah, and Oppos at one stage, of course, both had Shorthorns as well. And so, if we move on into the Charolais, then did you start with some of the early Charolais cattle that came into the country? Were you one there along with Drew Adam to bring in some of the very first ones that came in?
I wasn't in at the very beginning. I was in shortly after. Um, I wasn't on the buying committee. I was on the buying committee of the menagerie, but not the Charolais. Um, but by the time I was wanting to go in, there was a lot of um, wealthy men went into Charolais in for a quick buck, if you like. I thought so they didn't last long, and then they started dispersing their herds. And I bought my foundation females at these dispersal herds.
Yeah.
Most notably, the showering of baby sham.
Yes.
That was a good herd. A lot of them very French. So I bought 2 or 3 very good cattle from him. I also bought a very good cow from Tony Harmon, Dan Harmon.
Yes.
Harmon, the original Charolais man.
Yeah.
I bought I remember looking all around his herd, and he'd won the 2 outstanding cows he'd imported from France, and I didn't think he'd sell them, but I offered him quite a good price, and he sold one of them.
Excellent.
Cheshire Foire was its name.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm quite friendly with Ben now. So they're still going and still in the breed now. Another 2 or 3 generations down.
Very much so. He sold a good bull a couple of years ago. Yeah.
And so you built you dispersed the Shorthorns completely. Then let the Charolais take over. So what sort of numbers did you build the Charolais up to?
Well, we were about 30, 40. We're now 60 breeding cows, or we had about 55, 60 breeding cows. And that's about as many as we can comfortably handle on the facilities we've got.
And big successes with that. Another bull, Balmoral Champion, was a successful bull that you bred. Made a big price.
Yeah, he was the first successful bull, if you like, was my wild Bruce. He was a B for Champion. He was the first bull to be sold back to France.
Oh, really? Okay.
Raymond, Monsieur Raymond, he came over to the Royal Show or whatever. I think I was showing, and he liked this bull, so he bought it privately to go back to France. And the next year we bought Wild Champion, which that made the record price at that time.
33,000, am I right thinking, around a bit there?
He was 33,000.
Yeah.
It was short-lived. Esmond Evans came in the next year with Mary Director, which made 55,000. So my spot of fame disappeared rapidly.
and Monsieur Raymond was judging that year, if I remember right. I was at that sale.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're at that sale. Good.
Yes, I was. I had scimitars at that sale, so addressing cattle at that sale, so I remember it well. The last sale in the old market. And you've now moved on. We're now 30 years later, and you've just carried on with the Charolais and always putting bulls into Perth every year, and they're still doing you well.
Yeah, we're very very keen on my Charolais. We've got a very good stockman, Dane Ivison, who's very keen, and we discuss cattle a lot. While I'm mentioning stockman, I should have mentioned Friar Thompson, who looked after my Shorthorns.
Of course, yes.
Friar was also an exceptional stockman. He was on Shorthorns, but Dane is now looks after the Charolais, and as I say, I'm very enthusiastic about the Charolais breed.
And bringing up to date last year, I think, or maybe the year before, Balmoral Sandy, am I right? It sold for 28,000. Did he go to Ireland?
He went to the Charolais in Ireland. Yeah, he was champion at the Balmoral show, and then interbreed champion.
Yes.
And then there's a European championship. I'm not quite sure how that works, to be honest. But he was the European champion as well. But he was a good Charolais.
Strangely enough, the European thing is the one that PJ Butler runs on. I was judging the Charolais for the Europe this year, as it happens, but that's and the Charolais breed, of course, went through its issues. We can't deny that with calving problems, and the Limousin came in and took a little chunk of the thunder. And did your cattle change? Did you get involved in the numbers and all the data on that side of it?
Yeah, we had to pay attention to the data. I'm not sure how accurate all the data is. the calving figures to me don't stack up. We can have an animal with a terrible calving figure, which is the easiest calver of the lot, and you can have, and vice versa. So I don't fully understand the calving figures with Charolais, but we have to pay attention to the data because a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to the data.
Demanding it, yeah. And the Charolais now have gone, I wouldn't say full circle, but they've certainly now in the last Sterling sale, and I don't know if you had cattle there. I wasn't actually. I was at the Angus sale, but not the Charolais sale. But a fantastic average of something around about 12,000, and they're right back at the top.
It was the most amazing sale I've ever been to. And we had on the previous sale in October, we had the champion, and it made 12,000. Mm-hmm. Had it been in the February sale, we would have had a different story altogether. The average was up by about £3,000. So.
Yeah. And a lot of that to do with now, I mean, the price of saw cattle has gone through the roof. The price of beef, of course, is up as well. But it seems to be that, the Charolais, we're getting paid more on weight, and that's what the Charolais is scoring, I think.
Well, they are scoring on weight, without a doubt. And the original stigma was calving, calvers, but they're not poor calvers anymore, I would say.
No. Yeah, the breeders change. Well, say congratulations on all of that. Can we just move on a little bit to your arable business that you run there, because you run an exceptional business from what I've heard anyway with regards to the peas. Let's just start with. I think you were the one that started with peas there at Bruce Farms.
Yeah, that was 53 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So we now grow peas throughout the country. And we have a factory that freezes them as well. So
I think I read some of that half the peas that come out of Scotland come through your hands in one way or another. Would that be right?
Well, there are only two growers really, and we actually share the factory 50-50.
Okay.
And apart from there's right on the border, Eyemouth, there's a group, but we're the only two growers in Scotland.
Okay, and you run pea viners, again, massive machines that cost a fortune, and you run, how many of those do you run these days, the big machines?
We have 7 of these, yeah.
7. And are you vining peas for other people? Is that a contracted business, or is this purely your own peas?
No, it's purely our own. We rent land from all around here. We're very fortunate in where we are. The factory's in Dundee, and so in a 40-mile radius of Dundee, is exceptionally good land. So we're very fortunate to have that, and we can rent land because it's a really good break crop from cereals.
Indeed,
most of our renting is repeats from the year before or many years before.
Mm-hmm. The 3-year cycles, yeah. And can I ask you how many acres of peas do you grow?
Well, we've got a lot of acres of peas. Yeah.
a lot of acres of peas. That's fair enough. And I believe black currants as well. My grandfather was in black currants in the early days, and he used to talk about the early days in Ribena. And I believe that some of that comes back to you as well. The black currants has been an early thing with you.
Yeah, we've had black currants since 1980 something. With the all go to Ribena, Suntory. Mm-hmm. There are 4 growers in Scotland, and I think about 30 odd growers in the whole of the UK, and that's Ribena's intake for black currants.
Okay, that's it.
Been in them a long time. They're a fairly stable crop.
Yeah, so my grandfather was in them, and yes, certainly back in the.
That must have been in Herefordshire or down in that part.
Yeah, Worcestershire. Yes, it was. He was into that. I think he was one of the guys in the original. And when they put Ribena together, he was part of that setup. But you've also got raspberries, obviously a native to Perth or to your county anyway. But and strawberries and various other things as well.
Well, my son Jeffrey, who we farm together really, but as far as strawberries and raspberries are concerned, he is completely and utterly in charge of doing anything at all with them, because I keep well clear of them. There's too many people running around.
Yes, there's a lot of stuff. And potatoes as well is another big crop for you too.
That's always been our peas are our main enterprise, but potatoes have always been we used to we're now mainly on contract, but in the early days, we used to say you grow potatoes for 5 years and make little or nothing. Then in the sixth year, you get a bit of a boom, and you can then go and buy another harvester. But it's only there used to be a boom every now and again, but you have to. It's like climbing a ladder. You've got to climb up a bit and then hang on till the next boom comes, and then climb up a bit more.
Yes, that sounds about sums up the potato world. You're right. And the cold storage, you said you run there, and a packaging business. And do you package? Somebody said the other day, who was I with? John Campbell the other day, and he said they'd had some honeyberries or something, and they were packaged by you. So do you package fruit for other people as well? Is that what that business does?
We don't package for other people. We package for all the supermarkets ourselves. This is my son Jeffrey's department, and he also has freeze drying. We freeze dry honeyberries, for example, and make them into snacks.
That's probably the one, and I think it was his wife saying he'd had some snacks and they were very nice. So pass my compliments on.
Yeah.
And finally, we're going to you've received the very prestigious Sir William Young Award, and congratulations on that. I'm not quite sure when that was, but that's a huge accolade.
Oh, that's a huge honour. Yeah, I really was quite overwhelmed with that honour, because having seen who's all had it before, there's a lot of people very well-known stockmen who have had it before.
The prestigious award indeed. Well, Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, and certainly some very interesting facts about some of those early days and what's gone on since. And we wish you well and carry on well with the Charolais, and we'll maybe bump into you next time we're at the Highland Show, perhaps.
Well, thank you very much. I look forward to catching up with you in the flesh, Andy.
Bill, thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Top Lines and Tales, the nation's favourite livestock podcast. And as always, we'd like to say a word of thanks to our sponsors, Harborough, for their continued support. And of course, now many of you will just be heading towards lambing, and you need to speak to Harborough about UFeed. Their Premium 18 is the market-leading UFeed, packed full of energy, fibre and quality protein. Not only will it keep your ewes in tip-top condition, but it'll also make sure colostrum is full of goodness to get lambs off to the best start. Harborough are renowned for not only for the good stuff in their food, but also what doesn't go in. No nasty palm kernels and other things going in there. So speak to Harborough's team to find more information. And you can find Harborough on the internet, or pop down to your local store there and have a chat with them. And while you're there on the internet, don't forget to join our Top Lines and Tales Facebook community, where you'll find images and other things to back up this and previous episodes.